What is Aurora Borealis? What is the significance? Does it only happen in the northern regions or anywhere else? Aurora Borealis, it's been in the news of late, hasn't it? There have been these solar storms, geomagnetic storms that the Earth has been facing the brunt of the past week or so. And auroras have been very visible in various parts of the world. Auroras were visible from northern India, from Ladakh. Can you imagine that? I haven't heard about such an occurrence in my living memory. Auroras visible from India. So, what is the aurora borealis? Is it a phenomenon that only occurs in the northern hemisphere? Not so. That's not quite the case. There is something called the aurora australis as well, which is visible from the southern hemisphere, from the South Pole region. Now, what is this phenomenon? It's essentially the northern lights, the southern lights. You see lights shimmering in the atmosphere. It's typically green. You also have blue, you also have pink, and you also have various other colors. But it's typically the major color that you typically see is green. So, what causes this magical display of shimmering, waving light of various colors? It is the interaction of the Earth's magnetic field and the atmosphere with the solar wind. So that we have to understand what the solar wind is. The solar wind is plasma that is emitted by the sun on an ongoing continuous basis. The sun has an atmosphere, let's say. I mean, there is a region. If you go towards the sun, then you will reach a region where the sun becomes denser than water. But the sun has various layers, and one of the layers can be called the you could consider it to be the atmosphere of the sun. And there are various phenomena that exist over there. The sun has a very powerful, really powerful magnetic field, and you can see the magnetic lines of force in terms of the solar prominences and all that. And the sun ejects millions of tons of plasma per second, I guess. And what is plasma? It is essentially bits and pieces of hydrogen atoms, essentially free protons and electrons. That's what solar wind is. That's what the plasma is. So all of this is emitted by the sun in all directions. That's one phenomenon that happens all the time. Then you have coronal mass ejections, which are these loops of matter that come out of the sun's surface, and sometimes these loops break off depending on the magnetic field activity. And then there's this massive amount of solar material that's ejected in a certain direction. And if it is coming towards the Earth, then well, that causes various phenomena. So you have the solar wind, you have coronal mass ejections, and then you have solar prominences, and you have the emission of various kinds of radiation, typically very high energy radiation, gamma radiation, visible radiation, ultraviolet radiation from the sun, and so on. So now, when the solar wind comes towards the Earth, then the Earth itself has a magnetic field which is way weaker than the sun's magnetic field. And these charged particles, because they are charged, they will interact with the Earth's magnetic field, and you will see that these particles generally are dragged or are pulled by the magnetic field, the Earth's magnetic field, towards the polar regions. So this constant stream of charged particles, plasma, it converges in the polar regions because of the magnetic field of the Earth, and then it hits the Earth's atmosphere at various heights and various speeds, and that's what causes this glowing display of light. So when this solar wind interacts with the Earth's atmosphere at, let's say, around 300 kilometers above the surface, it will give you a certain kind of light. Sometimes it will be blue, depending oxygen at which altitude, what kind of interaction is there, that gives you different colors of light. Nitrogen also. So I think oxygen at 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface, if it interacts with the plasma, solar wind, it gives off green light. Somewhat higher, about 300 kilometers, it's blue light, and nitrogen gives off various colors. And the same phenomenon happens at the South Pole, in the South Polar regions as well. But when there is a massive amount of plasma coming in because of solar, augmented solar activity, then you may see these displays of light even at the southern, at the latitudes that are closer to the equator, and which is how we had the recent phenomenon where we saw auroras from northern India, from Ladakh. So that essentially is the aurora borealis, aurora australis. It's because of the interaction of the solar wind, this plasma, with the atmosphere of the Earth, and it happens near the polar regions because of the interaction of this plasma with the Earth's magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic field drags it and pulls it towards the polar regions, where it starts impacting the atmosphere of the Earth, and that's what causes the phenomenon.